Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the District Planning Committee on Thursday, the 30th of May, 2024. For the benefit of members of the public here and anyone watching online, I'll just make one or two introductions. I'm Councillor Phillips, the Chairman of the committee. To my left is Councillor Sweatman, my Vice Chairman. On my right is Stephen King, the team leader for major developments in the planning department, and to his right is Paul Weeks, our planning solicitor for today. And in the corner, two corners, are members of the Democratic Services team who will be taking the minutes and working with technology for us. So if we can now move on to the agenda. Yeah, it's on here. Yeah. We can move to the first item on the agenda. It's to ratify the appointment of the chairman and the vice chairman, which was agreed on the 15th of May at the annual council. Can members please confirm those appointments? Thank you very much. That saves any embarrassment. I'd like to welcome all members back. I think we've got exactly the same committee as we had last year, so welcome back. And I think by the sounds of it, we've got a busier year ahead of us. Item 2, to receive apologies. I have apologies from Councillors Kennedy and Peacock, and everyone else is here. To receive declaration of interest from members in respect of any matters on the agenda. I actually would like, just for clarity, to say that on DM 240540, I was actually at 2 Worth Parish Council meetings. I sat in the pub strong Councillors Kennedy and the proposers made, the applicants did make a presentation. I didn't take part in any of the discussions. I was merely there to observe. Are any Councillor Bates?
Yes, I'm one of the ward members for item 7, the Victoria Park scheme, and it seems that I had been consulted by the council about the proposals. I thought quite a while ago, but if there's any, and obviously I was very supportive of what was being proposed, so if there's any problem today, I will just sit this one out.
I think for clarity it would probably be as well, if you wouldn't mind. Councillor, thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Yes, I'm a ward member appointed for item 6 on the agenda. I'm a member of First Point and South Parish Council, but not a member of their planning committee, and therefore haven't expressed any opinions on this particular site at that committee meeting.
Fine, thank you very much. Right, item 4, to agree by a general affirmation the minutes of the previous meeting meetings held on the 7th of March and 21st of March. Can members indicate they're happy with those minutes, please?
Agree.
Thank you very much. Item 5, to consider any items that the chairman agrees to take as urgent business. I have none. So we now move on to the substantive part of the agenda. Item 6, DM 181860, Nowdritz Farm, Pookbourne Lane, Sayers Common, Hassocks, West Sussex, BN 69HD. I'll ask the Planning Officer, Stuart Malcolm, to make his presentation, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Afternoon all. I'll just take members through the update sheet, first of all, if I may, before I just give you a quick introduction to the application itself, and obviously for the benefit of any of those attendees who don't have an update sheet to hand. So the first update relates to an alteration to paragraph 10.8 of the report. Basically, this is simply deleting reference to the term world class to define the polo events that the applicant is looking to pursue here, because that is not the intention now. It does remain the intention, however, to host 4 tournaments over 8 weekends as per the report, but that's simply just deleting reference to the term world class from there. Paragraph 1220, the next update, reference here should now be made to the delivery of the restoration, landscaping, planting and the associated biodiversity enhancements being secured through the legal agreement, as well as through the condition. This will ensure that these benefits get delivered in accordance with those policies set out there. And as a consequence of that, you'll have noted already that the application is subject to a dual recommendation purely to secure the legal agreement that was already proposed to secure monitoring of the site access and speeds around there, but it's now also amended to make reference to the legal agreement needing to secure the restoration, planting, landscaping and biodiversity enhancements I just mentioned. So the application itself, well, the application site is part of Naldretts Farm and is an area of countryside located between Pookbourne Lane to the western side of the site and Cookfield Road. Shall I pause?
Do you mind testing out your page? Oh, no.
All okay? Okay, I'll just start again. So the application site is part of Naldretts Farm and is in an area of countryside located between Pookbourne Lane further to the west and Cookfield Road, that you can't quite see on this scale of plan, further to the east. The site is demarcated by the red line on the plan in front of you and measures just under 6 hectares in area. The site is currently used for occasional horse grazing, and the surrounding rural land is used for similar grazing and agricultural purposes. There are, though, a number of residential properties in close proximity to the site itself. So the nearest of these can be found immediately to the south, the southwest, Hungerfield Cottages. The northwest, up at Naldretts, where there's several properties, and sort of the northeast, there's 2 properties called the Old House and the Old Barn. So in terms of the site constraints at the moment, the proposal is within the countryside as defined by the development plan, but the landscape itself does not benefit from any other specific or statutory designations. You'll have noted from the report the proximity of an area of ancient woodland, and that is this area in the dark green to the east, known as Hungerfield Woods. Like I said, just to the southeast, and follows Mill Lane around to the north as it comes round from the south of the site. There are further trees down the western side of the site, outside the application site boundary, I should say, but none of these benefit from any formal protection. One of the key features of the site, and as noted in the report, is that the site slopes down from north to south. Hopefully you can see the contours clearly enough on the plan before you. But the drop in levels, as stated by the applicant, is between 5 and 7 metres across the site, that's going from north to south. So the proposal is to construct a polar pitch on the site. One of the key features of this is that it will consist of importing soils to level and regrade the pitch surface that the applicant states is necessary to conform with the appropriate standards required for polar pitches. A new vehicular access is proposed directly onto North End Lane to the south. This is also proposed as being the construction access. Plans include the installation of an irrigation storage pond to the immediate west of the pitch, which will be linked to a new water harvesting system that will be located underneath the pitch itself. In terms of the use, I just touched on it when I was referencing the update sheet a moment ago. So the pitch is to be a private facility, although it is proposed to host up to 4 events per year, with each of these lasting up to 4 days and will be held over weekends. So I mentioned the change in levels a moment ago. I've just got a couple of cross sections to show you on this image. So while some cut and fill will be used towards the north end of the site, which is sort of the top end, the top image on the left-hand side of this plan, the applicant does intend to import materials to facilitate the raising of lands to provide this level surface. So in order to achieve this level pitch, it is anticipated that approximately 93,000 cubic metres of fill material will be required. The applicant further states that this will see the land raised on average across the whole pitch area, so on average by 1.5 metres. But as illustrated in these cross sections, and because of the existing change in levels I've noted a moment ago, this will see some areas of the site increased in height by approximately 3 metres. As members will have seen from the report, the importation of materials will see approximately 50 lorry loads of materials per day coming to the site for an anticipated period of 38 weeks of construction. As acknowledged by officers, this intensive activity will have an impact on neighbouring amenity. It is, though, an activity that will only be for a temporary construction period, and as such, it is considered that it falls short of breaching the significant harm test set out in district plan policy. So the applicant's planting proposals are shown on this landscaping plan. The woodland block planting, which is referenced in the report, to expand the existing woodland on the eastern side and the tree belt on the western side of the site. We'll see the planting of 750 new trees on both sides of the polar pitch, as well as to the southern side. Between this new woodland planting and the polar pitch itself, wildflower grassland is proposed, and that's the dotted areas on this plan. This extensive planting required as part of the restoration and landscaping scheme will help to minimise the visual impact of the proposals, to ensure it's compatible with its rural setting, and its delivery will be secured through the legal agreement and conditions that I mentioned at the outset. So overall, there are not considered to be any reasonable grounds to object to the application purely on visual amenity grounds. So in terms of the access, this plan shows the new access that is to be created onto North End Lane, which becomes part of Mill Lane, to the south of the site. This will be the access to the site for the construction purposes and the permanent access to the site once it becomes operational as a polo pitch. Works here include the removal of some of the boundary hedgerow for the provision of the appropriate visibility displays, so that's this area here, and works here also include the installation of bollards, roadside markers and new signage further down the highway. These access works are deemed acceptable to the Highways Authority to facilitate a safe access and will be secured by condition. So away from the main access itself, so this image, the top image shows a larger scale with some sort of insets of showing some more detail as to what specifically is proposed along the highway. But following consultation with the Highways Authority, the applicant is proposing to carry out some road widening in certain places along North End Lane, Mill Lane, as shown on this plan. These works also show the provision of what is effectively the creation of a new passing place before the junction with Cookfield Road running north-south over to the east of the site, and this is the passing place. And this inset shows the passing place in a bit more detail. It's this element itself which requires the translocation of some of the hedgerow, which has been accepted as an acceptable solution by our ecological consultant. These works will enable an effective route for construction traffic coming in from the east, so from Cookfield Road, and then leaving the site and heading off to the west and towards the A23. Although the full details of this will be secured through the construction management plan condition. Members will note that there are no technical objections from West Sussex on highways grounds. I'll just finish with a few photos of the site. So this first image is a view from within the site from a broadly central position looking south, where you can see this is the southern boundary hedgerow that runs alongside North End Lane. The next photo is from pretty much the same position, looking broadly northeast. You can see the ancient woodland at Hungfields Wood over towards the east of the site here. Next photo is looking broadly north, west from, again, the same position. I did move around the site, I promise. And this is looking northwest towards the now Dretz properties. You can see their roof lines above some of the trees and vegetation there. And then this is a photo from much further south in the site, looking north towards the northern boundary of the site. And I'm not sure how well it comes out on the image, but this hopefully gives an indication for those members that couldn't attend the site visit on Tuesday about the drop in levels from north to south. I've just got a few street view images as well. So this is looking east along North End Lane, close to the site access, which is proposed to be located broadly in this position on the left-hand side of the image as you look at it. Further to the east along the highway, this street view image shows an area on the corner near the junction with Pomp Lane, where some of the highway carriageway will be widened in this area here, approximately. And further to the east along the highway, same highway, this image shows the location of the full passing place that just flagged specifically on the final plan. That's to be constructed on Mill Lane near the junction with Cookfield Road. So in conclusion, the key issues for members are, as outlined in the report before you, the application is on balance considered acceptable in principle, and in terms of the other main planning issues, these have been found to be acceptable with mitigation included where required, and the application is therefore recommended for approval. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Right, we'll now move on to the public speakers, and just before anyone does speak, just to screen where the clock will show. Thank you very much. And yeah, Councillor Prescott, if you can look that way a little bit. Yeah, thank you very much. I will try and indicate when there is a minute left. A minute left. So if we could have the first speaker, please. Bob Sampson of Hurstpit Point and Sayers Common Parish Council. And the 3 minutes will start when you start speaking.
Right, thank you. The first thing is the traffic plans submitted with this application are not fit for purpose. Supposedly supporting the applicant's one-way system for construction and polo traffic, exiting through Mill Lane to the A23, northbound through Hickstead Showground and southbound through Sayers Common Village. The submitted plans, unsurprisingly, omit the two blind bends at Cobb's Mill between Pookbourne Lane and Langton Lane. These have a steep incline between them. An on-site visit to this section is absolutely necessary, as it is more dangerous than it would appear on a desktop review. The NPPF policy 180 says that development resulting in the loss or deterioration of irreplaceable habitats should be refused unless there are wholly exceptional reasons. I have concerns for what are deemed important hedgerows by the Hedgerows Regulation in 1997. Transplanting these hedges to make passing places for heavy vehicles when there is no robust research showing the survival of ground flora, fungi or invertebrates following such work is an unproven technique and should not be considered. Also, I cannot see any wholly exceptional reasons for this in this application. The NPPF also states in its core planning principles that planning should proactively drive and support sustainable economic development. Where in this plan is there any of this for our community? It only seems to benefit the applicant. And where are the promised employment opportunities? There may be a few hours' work controlling traffic at 4
1 minute
polo
left.
matches a year, unless, of course, the expensive, no longer world-class polo pitch is intended to be used for more than the declared 4 meetings a year. If the committee decide, in spite of all the local objections, to allow this plan, a planning condition must be put on it to restrict such meetings to the 4 times a year stated in the application. Thank you, that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Right, the next speaker speaking in favour is David Spragg from DS Equine. And again, you've got 3 minutes and it will start when you start speaking.
Good afternoon, members. I was asked to assess this application with a critical eye, especially with traffic concerns and the construction phase. My firm specialises in equine projects, has designed and constructed many polo fields in this country. I would not be speaking now unless I was totally satisfied that everything has been addressed in the correct way. The normal concerns have been raised. The Highways Authority has confirmed that access arrangements are acceptable with an east to west one-way system for construction traffic to ensure that HGVs do not meet along Mill Lane. To help with access along Mill Lane / North End Lane, paths and places will be provided. One of these is before the junction with Cookfield Road. These have been created to mitigate any impact on the highway. Period of time of HGV movements is estimated to be 38 weeks and will avoid peak periods of use on the highway network. This and other measures will be secured for our traffic / construction management plan, which will include the passing places, working times, etc. This is the most effective way to control construction traffic. Throughout the planning process, extensive discussions were held with the Highways Authority and a road safety audit was undertaken. This is approved by the Highway Authority. The site access design was considered by the Highway Authority for road safety considerations as regarded as acceptable. As part of the process, the applicant will be required to monitor the site access post-construction. If speeds have not been reduced past that entrance, further measures will be required. This will be secured via Section 106 legal agreement. The construction traffic programme is being controlled by a construction management plan. For post-development, a travel plan statement has been recommended, and there are 8 planning conditions relating to highways. In summary, there are no planning reasons for his application to be refused on the grounds of highways. With regards to construction phase, this is to be controlled via a construction and environmental management plan, which covers traffic, storage of materials, construction noise,
Just
and
under 1
working
minute
times.
left.
This is an effective way to control the site. The key to a well-run site which follows all the planning guidelines is a professional site management. Both Sports Pitch Design and Build and Penfold Vale have a lot of experience running sites of this kind. This grass polo field is in keeping with the rural landscape, is a low-intensive use, which can be best described as country house polo. In conclusion, I would ask you to approve this application for consent as concerns have been addressed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, the next speaker is Tim Rodway, who is a planning consultant for the applicant, I understand.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, members. As is evident from the date this planning application was submitted, the proposals have been subject to considerable delays caused by additional detailed negotiation, amendment and further requested survey work. The principal matters that have been the subject of this work have been highways and latterly ecology. However, following meticulous and extensive consultant input and discussions with relevant officers and consultees, there are no objections raised in respect to these issues. Comments have come from the County Waste and Minerals Officer. However, as set out in your officer's report, we have responded fully to these comments, and your officer agrees with us that the proposals are justified, supported by local and national policy, and when considered in the planning balance, the proposals warrant approval. The Waste Officer refers to Policy W8, which relates to the the depositing of inert waste on land. This proposed use will be in part created by the positive reuse of inert soils that are a byproduct of the construction industry. The applicant intends to operate the site under a CLARE or CLAIRE definition of waste code of practice, which enables the direct transfer and reuse of clean, naturally occurring soils between sites. Such materials are not deemed to be a waste product and will ensure only naturally occurring soils that are entirely suitable for the intended use are utilised for the construction. It is accepted that the change of use of the land and associated works will alter the character of the site, but this effect will be modest and confined only to the site itself and its immediate vicinity. Indeed, in visual terms, the proposals will not materially alter the character of the rural landscape, as the site will be laid to grass with minimal physical structures proposed to be added. The extensive work carried out by the applicant's transport consultants clearly confirmed that the highway impacts are acceptable and that HGV movements will only be for a fairly limited period. The proposed conditions that relate to this matter are accepted by the applicant.
1 minute left.
Drainage is to be dealt with on-site with the creation of a new pond which will enhance the biodiversity value of the site. We note that the Conservation Officer has confirmed that the proposal will not affect the setting of designated heritage assets, but has identified a minor impact on 2 non-designated heritage assets, but the impact would be at the lower end of the scale. The Planning Officer has carried out a planning balance in this respect, and we agree with their conclusion that the benefits of the proposed development clearly weigh in favour of supporting the application. In terms of ecology, a number of further reports were provided at the request of the Council's ecologist, who has confirmed that they have no objections. Translocation of the hedgerow along Mill Lane will ensure its biodiversity and habitat connectivity is maintained post-development. There are 750 new trees in woodland planting blocks, wildflower areas, bat boxes and nest boxes, which have been recommended to secure measurable net gains for biodiversity, and these will be controlled via conditions.
Could you wind up, please?
In conclusion, we respectfully request that members support the case presented by officers and approve the plan application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Right. Stuart, do you wish to respond to any of those points, or?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I will take the opportunity, if I may, just to clarify something that was raised by the representative from the Parish Council, please, and that it relates to the hedgerow. I note reference was made to this being called irreplaceable habitat. So the hedgerow, which is the hedgerow that's subject to the translocation to facilitate the passing place up near the Mill Lane, Cookfield Road junction, is deemed to be an important hedgerow for the hedgerow regulations purposes. But it's not in the NPPF or the more recent BNG definitions as irreplaceable habitat. So an important hedgerow is not within the definitions of irreplaceable habitat. Irreplaceable habitat is referred to in the NPPF, and exceptional circumstances would need to apply to justify their loss, but it's not deemed to be irreplaceable. And that is also as confirmed by the ecologist who assessed the hedgerow. They haven't deemed it to be irreplaceable, and that has also been corroborated by our ecological consultant, as well as the tree officer, who haven't raised any objections to its loss. So it's a bit, the scenario is a bit like the where you have an application before you with a site that includes a tree with a TPO on it. So the granting of a planning permission would override the TPO status. So it's a similar scenario, essentially, in this case, where there's an important hedgerow. But yeah, it's not irreplaceable for the purposes of the NPPF definitions. Just thought I'd clarify that. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you. There's just one other thing that I'll clarify before we go any further. Members had queried why, in view of the emphasis put on the item W8 of the West Sussex County Council conditions, why we have this before us today and not West Sussex County Council. This application actually goes back to 2018, and at the time was validated by this council So as a result of that, we have got to adjudicate on it, and not West Sussex County Council. I hope that clarifies that situation. Right, members, over to you for debate. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm well familiar with the site and the road network around this particular site. One or two things which concern me. One, the amount of material you've got to bring in to raise the particular pitch between about 1.5 metres to 2 metres. I can understand why you need to have adequate draining to make sure it can be used in wet weather, and also control the sort of moisture in the soil so it doesn't dry out too much in dry weather. But that large amount of material would necessitate, as you say, a large number of lorry movements bringing that material to the site. Now, if we think about Mill Lane, North End Lane, if you're proposing a one-way system, coming from the east towards there, obviously you need to turn out of Cookfield Road into what is quite a narrow lane, quite a lot of vehicle movements in a day. And I know you say that the construction management regulations will mean that it won't be happening at peak time, but that is a very, very rapid stretch of Cookfield Road where cars travel up to perhaps a sort of maximum 60 miles an hour. So it can be quite a dangerous turn into that particular road. You're talking about a one-way system, which means the lorries will then possibly go down towards Cobbs Mill, which is a S-bend and goes over what I call a bridge over a stream. Whether the sort of constant movement of lorries over that bridge will have any damage on that bridge, I don't know, but it's West Sussex County Council seems to deem that's all right, but I'm concerned about that. In terms of the actual use of it, you talk about 4 tournaments carrying over a period of about 4 days, so that's 16 days of use. You obviously need quite a few horse boxes to go there to carry the ponies to and from. So there again, you're going to have quite a lot of movement. And if you've got actually movement of vehicles and horse boxes from Mill Lane into the Cookfield Road, again, that's going to be quite a difficult thing because horse boxes go quite slowly, quite large. Again, we have maybe more traffic problems at that junction of Mill Lane and Cookfield Road. So possibly in terms of traffic issues, I do have concerns.
Thank you. Councillor Rees.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I have various questions about this. Firstly, about the hedge. According to Place Services, who are the consultants to this council, this hedge is important, as we've heard from Mr. Malcolm, and removal should be prohibited unless subject to exemptions. And the hedge could indeed predate the Enclosure Act, so therefore it could be ancient. So I'd like to ask whether there are exemptions in this case. Second question, has there been any structural survey to the Cobbs Mill Bridge to establish whether it can take all the HGVs coming over it? Thirdly, will the 6'6" restriction disappear if all these passing places are made? Because there is a concern that this road is already a bit of a rat run, could become a lot more of a rat run if there were all these passing spaces. Now, we've heard from the applicant and latterly from Mr. Spragg that they will avoid peak times, but the last document that appeared on the portal says that they're asking now for 8 a.m. starts. Can we clarify that? And it looks like the movements would be 1 HGV every 3.5 minutes. Well, when we were there at the site visit and I tried to exit the site, there was a lady coming up on what I would assume would be a cart horse. I'm not an equine expert, but it was a big horse and they were proceeding very slowly and I probably had to sit there for 5 minutes. Mr. Bates, Councillor Bates was following me while this lady came past. So I don't see how they're going to be able to keep this rhythm up anyway, to be frank. This is a major cyclist route from Burgess Hill to the Sustrans NCN 20, London to Brighton route. So there are a lot of vulnerable users, not just horse riders. Last question probably. Does this, if this goes ahead, does this site become brownfield? And what about W20? In other words, what about the restoration of the field afterwards to its original condition? Will that be a condition, restoration and aftercare, W20? Thank you. I'll stop there for the moment.
You'd like to take those, Stuart?
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. I'll just come back on to both the speakers, if I may. Obviously, there's a theme there about the highways implications of this, and it's fair to say that this application has been subject to quite extensive consultation with West Sussex as the Highways Authority. They have visited the site. They'll be very familiar with the nature of the surrounding rural roads, both in terms of use and condition. The proposals for the mitigation in terms of the passing places along Mill Lane and the features around the site access point have been deemed acceptable as mitigating features to come to a highway solution for this proposal. I think it's just to reinforce the point that the Local Highways Authority, after all of this discussion, are still in the position where there's no objection. So members just need to bear that in mind. Fully appreciate that the construction period, there's no hiding from it, that the construction period will be an intensive period of highway use in terms of numbers of vehicles and the nature of vehicles for those 38 weeks. But it comes back to the point that West Sussex consider the highway impact on that. The highway is operating within capacity, and there's no safety reasons to refuse the scheme. So just to reinforce that. Also that the operational, obviously focused there mainly on the construction side of things, but obviously West Sussex have assessed it from an operational point of view. So they're aware of the use and fully aware that the number of horse boxes and larger vehicles will be required to access the site in terms of the operational use as a polo pitch. On the points about the exemptions under the Hedgerows Act, so it comes back to the point I made a moment ago about this planning permission will, if it's granted, will effectively override any requirements under the hedgerow regulations. So the submission of the application, which shows the removal of an important hedgerow, that is effectively like a notification to us as the local planning authority. And if we wanted to object to the removal of the hedgerow, then we can as a local authority, and then you put a process in place to retain that hedgerow. But officers consider this removal is acceptable. The translocation is a mitigating factor in that. But yeah, the ecology, there's no objections from an ecological perspective or a tree management perspective from both of our relevant consultees on that. The condition of the bridge, there is an informative number 1. I don't know for sure whether any survey work has been carried out at the moment, but there is a section 59 agreement under the Highways Act that the applicant is advised to enter into to basically make good any damage that is done to the surfacing or structure of the local highways network. The point about the last correspondence Councillor Eaves has seen on the file, that's a request to amend the maintenance condition, which is condition 21. At the moment, that is set out in the report as drafted, is allowing pitch maintenance activities between the hours of 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. on Monday to Fridays. The applicant has requested that be amended to 8 a.m. but we haven't gone with that amendment because this was suggested by the environmental protection officers to make sure that the amenity of neighbouring residents is protected once the site becomes operational. And the point about the restoration and aftercare, it's a good point, and this is one of the reasons why we've suggested that the restoration and aftercare, landscaping, etc., forms part of the legal agreement as opposed to just left to planning condition, because it there's a lot more power within the provisions of this being secured through the legal agreement. So yeah, that is a requirement. So I think that's all. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Bates.
I thought you had Councillor Sweatman.
That's my fault. I pressed the wrong button,
Okay.
so you are before me.
Yes, a couple of questions really. That in terms of the hedgerow that's going to be relocated, what stage is that going to be done, and how long is it likely to get re-established so that we will see another hedge there? And the other point is, and nobody seems to pick this up, is although it's only 4 meetings a year over 4 days, it's what's the intensity of the playing, morning, afternoon, 2 matches or a lot more? So I think it would be helpful if we knew, or local residents knew, what the intensity. I know it's a private arrangement, but when it's 4 days, that's quite a lot. In general, I'm very supportive of this application. To be honest with you, I went there thinking, oh, why have we got one up the road at Hickstead, a polo pitch? But it's not. It's actually the same as what we would see at Cowdray Park, which I'm quite familiar with. So it's quite a big pitch. So I'm very keen on it. And just as a point of mentioning cycling in the area, it's a road that I like cycling on, and I'm glad to see that passing points are being provided, and a hell of a lot more roads should have these for cyclists. So it looks like we've got a bit of a gain there.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there anything you want to?
Yeah, yeah, that's fine. I'll come back on that. Chair, thanks. So in terms of the passing places, because those passing places are required to facilitate the construction, they'll need to be provided before any other development takes place. So before any other large lorries bring in any fill to the site, those passing places will be implemented, and that obviously means the translocation of the hedgerow will come about as a result of that passing place introduction. In terms of the intensity of playing, yeah, this isn't really one where we've got sort of suggested, a lot of outdoor playing fields or pitches under floodlights, for example, might be subject to conditions on times of use. This is obviously a summer sport, and we've got the proposal by the applicant to use the polo pitch for 4 events, 4 events, each of them 4 days at a time. I think in terms of how you assess that against the impact on neighbouring amenity, I think it's not necessarily a question of the specific individual day-to-day impact of that. I think the impact on amenity is effectively controlled by the fact it's a relatively infrequent event use that's being put forward. And I think that's kind of reflected in the comments from the Environmental Protection Officer, who mentions in the residential amenity section of the report, but the EHO officer in paragraphs 12.43 to 44 to 45 basically looks about what the impacts of the use will be and considers that any activity or any noise, so from the tannoy, won't result in significant harm, and that is ultimately, as you know, ultimately the test of a planning application, whether it constitutes significant harm in amenity terms or not. So we're satisfied as officers that with the suggested conditions in place restricting tannoy noise, restrictions in place in terms of how often these events will happen, then that is sufficient in our view to control the impact on amenity so that it doesn't breach that significant harm test. Thanks.
Thank you, Sean. Councillor Sweatman.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I have a few questions to Stuart. Just a little bit concerned, I need to get this into perspective. You've got 93,000 cubic metres of soil being imported, and across the site, or across the pitch, there's going to be about 2 metres high. That is actually, putting into perspective, a lot higher than the hedgerow. And I think, if I'm right in saying, the green bit is it's sort of inset. But it's going to be 6 foot high across, so it's going to have that sort of engineered approach on that area. And it is actually a private pitch. It's not for the public. So, in effect, I think the actual harm outweighs the benefits. Obviously, there's no benefits for the wider community. Which brings us to policy W8 on page 26, paragraph A, when the proposal results in clear benefits, and I sort of dispute that, so there is a conflict in that. And one of the other things, can we actually guarantee that it will be actually used as a polo pitch if this was approved at the end of the construction and not just a soil import? I don't know whether we can condition that or not, I'm not sure we can. Sorry, I think I'll just leave that there. I may have to come back on something else, but I wonder if you could answer some of those questions, Stuart, please.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's a good point, this impact, this visual amenity impact point. And a bit like the construction impact, there's no getting away from the fact there is to be 93,000 cubic metres, as you say, is a lot of imported material. And that does result in an average increase in height of 1.5 metres across the whole polar pitch area. And that in places could be up to 2-3 metres in height increase. This plan that you can see is the site plan. Now, these dotted lines show the contours of the site as proposed. So they'll show grading works where the steeper elements are to the western side of the site and a more subtle increase towards the central part of the site, particularly where the site is essentially opened up by the vehicular access. And I think coupled with the landscaping plan that shows the proposed tree belt around in this southwest corner coming round and essentially, I suppose, plugging some visual gaps from the public realm to the south that aren't possibly there at the moment. I think officers are of the view that although the proposal will result in a feature that does appear engineered, the fact that it's all grassed and the fact it's quite well screened and the fact that the landscape doesn't benefit from any sort of statutory protection like Airbnb National Park, for example, we're satisfied as officers that that visual impact is acceptable in policy terms. But that's officers' view, and it's for members to take a view on that as well, obviously. In terms of the benefits you mentioned, yeah, you're quite right to flag that the benefits, well, I'll refer members, if I may, to paragraph 12.11 of the report. And this sets out the waste policy from the West Sussex Waste Local Plan that the application will need to comply with, and it's criteria A. So these types of deposition of inert waste are acceptable when they meet certain criteria. And criteria A is the proposal results in clear benefits for the site and, where possible, the wider area. Paragraph 12.12 is basically the applicant's response to that, and following that, officers consider that on balance the principle is acceptable. In terms of what those benefits are, they're sort of as set out in the report. I mean, it's the update sheet and what I took you through earlier referencing the legal agreements securing the restoration, landscaping, planting and biodiversity enhancements means that we can secure those benefits. So in terms of anything, essentially anything physical, we can secure. Any part of the proposal that is physical, we can secure. And that's the intention through the use of the legal agreement to secure that landscaping and the biodiversity enhancements. The benefits that will come associated with the construction will be secured through the implementation of the development itself. So any associated construction benefits. But then any benefits that will come up as a result of the operational use of the polo pitch, then you're quite right, Councillor Sweatman, when you said that we can't, although we can require the development to be delivered based on the form, what's on that plan, along with all the landscaping, we can't require a polo pitch to become operational of that. So in terms of any operational benefits, so those sort of associated leisure, social benefits in terms of the probably fairly limited economic benefits that would come from the use of those 4 events and any maintenance works that are required, you take those benefits at face value, essentially, because we can't categorically secure them being delivered, because we can't secure the operational delivery of a polo pitch. So members will have to take a view on that and consider whether the proposal results in clear benefits for the site and, where possible, the wider area. Like I said, officers' view is that on balance they do. So over to members, really.
Thank you. Councillor Bergreen.
Yes, I do have reservations about the effect on the lanes, but I was a bit unclear about it did say it remains the intention to host 4 tournaments. Will that be a condition if application is granted? Can that be a condition?
It is, yeah.
It is,
Would
yes.
lessen the...
Yeah, that is a condition.
Okay,
For the,
thank you.
Yeah, 4 events over 8 weekends. Yeah. Councillor Whittaker.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I would like to just state that this district council has a sports development strategy, which is to promote sport, which was adopted 5 or 6 years ago, that promotes all sports, positively likes to promote all sports, of which this is obviously one, polo being a specialist sport. However, I would thank you for explaining about the West Sussex planning situation, because ordinarily I thought that would have gone to them, but you've explained that very well. I do have some concerns about this, about the clear benefits test, but I think Mr. Malcolm has explained that very well. Just here, it's obviously going to be very, very limited use, and part of my cynical brain says this is going to be a pretty commercially viable proposition for importing of 130,000 tonnes of waste inert soil for the landowner. So, but having said that, I'm swayed by the lack of objections to planning policy. So it's an interesting one, but just the main point is this district council does have a strategy for promoting sport.
Thank you. Are there any other members that wish to speak? Right, can we move to a vote? Can I have a proposer for the officer's recommendation or a contrary recommendation if...
Sorry, Chairman, I'd like to...
Oh, sorry, did you want to come back?
No, I thought he was asking for...
Yeah, okay, sorry, yeah, go on. It's just your name didn't disappear off the form. So, go on, yes.
having what I've said and what I've heard, I'd recommend refusal on this application, Chairman.
Can you be specific in the reasons? Because obviously we'll have to put those forward in case of any appeal.
Well, one of the reasons I'd like to, obviously, case officer to agree that there is no clear public benefits. This is for the wider community. I don't know whether we can add anything to that.
Yeah, so just for members' benefit, I'll just read out the first part of policy W8, which is, I think, where you're coming from. So proposals for recovery operations involving the depositing of inert waste to land, including for the continuation in duration or the physical extension of existing operations, will be permitted, provided that, and this is criteria A, the point about the benefits. The proposal results in clear benefits for the site and, where possible, the wider area. So I think the point officers have made is that we consider that there are benefits to justify a positive recommendation. It sounds like you consider that it's the reverse, that there aren't those benefits.
Personally, yes.
Okay.
Do we have a seconder for Councillor Sweatman's? Can the members indicate on the screen, please? Councillor Reeves?
Yes, I'm happy to second, if that's okay.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Right, we'll move to a vote then. Just to be absolutely clear, we're voting, the proposal is that the application should be refused. So please, can members, we move to the vote. Right, the vote is now closed. 2 votes for refusal, 6 against and 2 abstentions. Do I need to have a separate vote for the... Right. Okay, now can I have a proposal for the officer's recommendation, please, for it to be, planning permission to be granted? Right. Thank you very much. Councillor Rico. And could I have a seconder, please? Thank you. Second, Councillor Overy. Right, in that case, can we move to the vote, please, for the recommendation for planning permission to be granted? Sorry, was the previous one cleared first? Okay. 2 members haven't voted? There's still 1 member not voted. Councillor Avery, apparently. Okay, so that's 6 votes in favour of granting permission and 4 against. So, for clarification, I will read out the recommendation. Recommendation A is recommended that planning permission is granted subject to the conditions listed in Appendix A. And recommendation B, as in the amendment sheet, if a satisfactory planning obligation is not completed by 30th of August 2024, it is recommended that the application be refused at the discretion of the Assistant Director for Planning and Sustainable Economy for the following reasons. In the absence of a signed legal agreement, the proposal fails to provide the required monitoring of the permanent site site access and associated works onto North End Lane post-construction to establish if traffic speeds past the site have been reduced and fails to secure the suitable restoration, planting and landscaping and biodiversity enhancements that are required. As such, the application fails to comply with policies DP12, DP21, DP26 and DP38 of the Mid Sussex District Plan, Policy Countryside Hurst C1, and Policy W8 of the West Sussex Waste Local Plan and the MPPF. Right, thank you very much. Right, we now move on to GM 24-0113, Victoria Park, South Road, Haywards Heath, West Sussex, RH 164LR. And Steve King is going to make the presentation on the case officer's behalf.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'll be quite brief on this one because, as you'll see from the report, the application is solely before the committee because the District Council are both the landowner and the applicant. So the application seeks general improvements to Victoria Park in South Road, Haywards Heath. So Victoria Park, as I'm sure members are very familiar, it's the area outlined in blue on the plan. It's located on the southern side of South Road, and the site of the application itself is this area in red on the south eastern side of the site. I'm sure members are familiar. There's quite a substantial fall in levels through the site down from the road down to the south. There's existing stepped and quite a steep ramp access across here, and this area is the children's play equipment. The wider site is laid to grass. South Road is a commercial area along in the centre of Haywards Heath. Commercial uses on the ground floor, flats above. Got Iceland supermarket adjoining the site to the east there. So just a bit more detail. This is the existing site plan. Say the planning application is the area outlined in red on the eastern side of the park. So this is the existing children's play equipment that's proposed to be modernised, renovated, and the existing access point to the site that's also proposed to be upgraded as part of this application. So proposed site plan shows change to the access path into the site. So the steepness of the existing ramp will be reduced to make it more accessible. Improvements to the access, new steps across here, and then general changes within the site in terms of the equipment being upgraded and replaced. The water feature in the centre of the site would remain as set out in the report. Just in a slightly zoomed in, a little bit more detail. Say that's the central water feature that would remain. The remaining equipment within the site all changed and upgraded. The details of all the specific works are set out in the report in section 10.1. There's 5 bullet points. So small section of hedgerow along the frontage removed along here to facilitate additional stepped access here, and a very small area of hedgerow within the centre of the site. The report makes reference to protection measures being in place during construction works to protect this tree here, and with that in place, the council's tree officer has no issues with the application. Just sections through the site that just highlight the differences in levels that I've highlighted, and I'm sure members are familiar with the site, but quite a fall in levels down from South Road to get into the park. That just shows the proposed change to the access within the site in terms of the section and lessening the slope. And just some photos of the site. So that's the existing path, quite steep, that will be proposed to be amended. That's a view looking down into the various pieces of equipment. You can see the lighter blue areas, the water feature that would remain. So for all the reasons that are set out in the committee report, officers consider this is an enhancement to the facilities on offer at the site, and it's recommended for approval.
Thank you. Right, before we go to the next discussion, could I ask Councillor Bates just to leave us for a couple of minutes?
Sorry, I want to leave.
Sorry, I thought you said you would leave.
I didn't, I said I wasn't going to get involved with the
All right,
discussion.
okay, fine. Okay, right, open to members. Has anyone got any comments? Councillor Jackson.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm quite familiar with the site, and the Ratty Play area is well used, and therefore modernising the equipment is something which we would welcome to encourage further use of that particular site. Also, again, that's quite a steep slope from South Road down to the site, so the steps will be an adjunct, and disabled access can go through from the access on the south-east side of the site from the road adjoining Iceland. So I think I would be in favour of agreeing with this particular application.
Thank you. Any other members move to the recommendation then?
Recommend approval, Chairman.
Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you very much, Councillor. So, can we now move to the vote, please? Right, that is unanimous. Or the 9 members that are voting, anyway, are unanimous. So that 69. I will read out the recommendation for the benefit of people watching. It's just that full permission is granted subject to conditions listed in Appendix A. There are no other recommendations at all, so that's purely it. Right, we're now at 3:10. The next item I would anticipate, we've got 8 speakers, and I'm sure there will be some discussion. So I would anticipate it taking about an hour and a half. Do members want a 5-minute break before we? Okay, so We okay now? Yep. Okay, right. Right, we now move on to item 8, items recommended for refusal. DM 240540, land west of Rowfant Business Centre, Wallage Lane, Rowfant, West Sussex, RH10 4NQ. So if I can ask Joe Swift to make the presentation, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just take members through the update sheet. We've had 6 additional representation letters which have objected to the proposal. We've also had an additional representation letter in support, and we've had 2 additional representation letters from the agent. On paragraph 12.19, page 104, it should read, "It is noted that Sports England offers support for this application and confirmed that they believe there is an identified need for this facility. Therefore, it is accepted there is a need for a climbing centre in the south east. However, the site search assessment looks at sites within built-up area boundaries to which it makes reference of issues of viability or brownfield sites which are occupied and not available. Furthermore, it discounts looking at greenfield sites and in part states." Paragraph 12.47 on page 110 should be amended to read, "To operate a broadly 1 hour frequency between sites of Three Bridges Station and East Grinstead Station." And paragraph 12.50 should be amended to read, "While the proposal is seeking to provide a minibus to and from East Grinstead Station and Three Bridges Station, it's also including a dial-a-ride service to the surrounding local villages." This application is seeking planning permission for a climbing centre with associated access, servicing, parking and landscaping to the west of Rowfant Business Centre. The application site is identified on the plan here outlined in red. It's located to the west of the existing Rowfant Business Centre. Between the application site and the business centre, there is a public footpath which runs between the two. And also of note that Worth Way runs along the northern front of the site. The site is designated within the Mid Sussex District Plan as being within the countryside, and it is an undeveloped greenfield site. In addition to being within the countryside, the woodland to the west is designated as ancient woodland, and the strip of woodland between the application site and Rowfant Business Centre is also designated as ancient woodland. The proposal, as shown on the other plan, is seeking to gain access from the existing access which serves the business centre, and it will come into a car park to the northern part of the site, which will provide spaces, total spaces of 84 spaces, 6 of which will be disabled parking. It also includes an area for cycle parking, and the building will also have an outdoor seating area, and as part of the proposal they are including some landscaping works, which I will mention later. These plans show the north and south elevations of the building. The building is of substantial size, so it measures approximately 42.7 metres in depth by 44.6 metres in width, and it'll have an overall height of 18.3 metres. The building itself is to be constructed of a mixture of facing brickwork, timber cladding and profile sheeting walls with a dove grey profile sheet roofing. And here we have the west and eastern elevations. The western elevation does include an outdoor climbing wall. The proposed building is not considered to be of any particular architectural merit and has a very functional appearance. And just for context, here we can see the floor plans of the building. As we see, the majority of the building will be set out for its intended use as climbing, but obviously along the right-hand side here and the rear, there is some other facilities associated with that. Obviously, the reception area, office, briefing room, changing facilities and toilets, staff room. And obviously on the first floor, it will also have a conference room, kitchen, seating area, veranda, and a fitness suite. And here we just have the second floor plan. Again, this section is related to the climbing use, but also has a viewing area and climbing associated with that. So as part of the application, we've also been provided a section through the building, and we've also had some visuals provided. So as you can see, the building is just below the height of the established trees on site. And although in the landscape there is a sort of mound, the proposal is still visible above that. It might not be too clear from this image. The proposal is supported by a landscaping scheme. So they are seeking to provide on-site BNG of net gain of 157.04%. And part of this, obviously, they're proposing planting, a buffer planting on the woodland sides. There is also the swale pond. There is also hedgerow and planting across the site and around the access. And there is also a hedge proposed along the boundary with the Worth Way to the northern part of the site. However, the BNG net gain has not been secured as a legal agreement hasn't been completed at this stage. And for context, we have some photos of the site. The first two are looking south from the access point. The second photo would be where the proposal will be viewed in this top corner. And the next photo is looking north down the access road towards Worth Way. And the final photo here is just showing a picture of the existing business park. Just to note that the buildings within this are a mixture of 1 and 2 story, whereas the current proposal is for a building of 18.3 metres, which will be 3 stories in height. So the next photos are from looking south towards the application site. As you can see, it is currently an undeveloped green field. And then we have a photo looking from the footpath across the site. And then we have a photo looking south, and north down the footpath along which runs between the Roadfront Business Centre and the application site. The main reasons for refusal are set out in the report, but just to summarise, the proposal, due to its size and scale, is not considered to represent a small-scale form of development. The proposal would change the rural character of this site. It does not fall into one of the use classes for permitted extensions to the existing employment site. While there is a need, it is not considered that sufficient evidence has been provided that there are no better alternative sites available that are related to the existing transport infrastructure, and despite the provision of electric minibus, it's still considered that there'd be a reliance on the private car, making this an unsustainable location. As the legal agreement has not been progressed, it would not secure the net gain for BNG on site. It would also not secure the travel plan auditing fee as requested by West Sussex County Council. Although there is an acceptable impact on neighbouring amenity, trees and drainage, when the development plan is read as a whole, it is considered that on balance, the scheme should be refused for the reasons set out in Appendix A. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Joe. Right, if we can now move on to the speakers, of which we have 8. Again, just for clarification, I advise the speakers they're limited to 3 minutes. The time will start when they start speaking, and I will try and indicate when there is a minute left. So if we could move to the first speaker, please, Ben Reid of Folly One Climbing.
Good afternoon. My name is Ben Reid. I'm the Managing Director of Volume 1 Climb in East Grinstead, and I'm speaking against these plans. I've already submitted numerous objections to these plans online, and I feel that my reasons against are very clear. However, here is a summary of my main objections. The applicant was asked by the Planning Department to demonstrate there is actually a need for this facility, which they have failed to do apart from some vague letter support from minority user groups and generic statements that the South East could benefit, not specifically Rowfant. The area is actually very well serviced by climb facilities by My Bouldering Centre in East Grinstead, rope climbing at K2 Crawley, and clip and climb also in Crawley, as well as a number of outdoor activity centres that also provide indoor climbing, not to mention the outdoor climbing opportunities of the Southern Santon outcrops. It therefore actually makes this area one of the best places to live in the South East for climb facilities. Could be seen that my objections are purely to protect my own business, which of course there is a level of truth there, but this does not mean that my information I've presented is false. To back up and validate my claims, I submitted letters from other climb wall operators that unanimously state they do not believe there is a need for this facility in the area and that it does not appear commercially viable. None of these operators stand to lose out financially should these plans go ahead, so it can be seen as objective and a big warning to both the applicant and the council about allowing these plans to proceed. The reason why this is important information to note is that should this project get permission and then fail, as these industry experts expect it to, then it will leave a considerable mark on the area that is unable to be repurposed to another use. Considering this project looks to develop a piece of greenfield land in the middle of the countryside, it's obviously imperative that the plans are worth this substantial loss. Climbing is a sport that has strong links to the outdoors, and so we as an industry have an obligation to protect the countryside, not bulldoze for our own commercial benefits. I'm not against the growth of climbing and can see that in the right area with the right proposition, then the sport would benefit from new facilities. But these have to be placed in locations that are in an area of good population density, which this isn't, good public transport links, which this definitely isn't, and in an area where it can bring something new, which this doesn't. Placing this size offering in the middle of the countryside with poor public transport links is simply trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. The good news is that there are a number of projects I'm aware of in the pipeline in the southeast that do meet the above criteria. The most notable is plans for an Olympic-sized facility in Crystal Palace, which has already got a lot of support and would be the perfect location to meet any need for the southeast as has been identified. The benefits outlined by the applicant are already available existing facilities in the area and who still have ample capacity, so these plans do not bring anything new to the local area apart from traffic and tearing up the countryside. I really hope the planning committee take on board my concerns about this project and decline it planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, the next speaker is Debbie Hindle, a local resident.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, members. I'm here representing my family and our neighbours in Rowfant, and we'd like to put forward 3 objections to this proposal. The first, it's not a sustainable development. It's a rural area, as you've seen and heard, with limited access to public transport. Bus stops are a 25-minute walk away, and the proposed minibus service or even a dial service from Three Bridges and East Grinstead simply won't be sufficient to manage the traffic that it will deliver. The plan acknowledges that 80% of the traffic will come by road and by car initially, and the targets in the plan to reduce this are just unfeasible without public transport. If there is a need for such a centre, it should be somewhere with easy access to public transport. Our second objection is because it's not sustainable, it will put too much traffic on Wallage Lane, and this isn't safe. We understand an application can be refused if it has an unacceptable impact on highway safety, and we really believe it will. Wallage Lane is a single track in many places, And there are stretches of public footpath along the road, so you also have pedestrians as well, causing congestion on the lane. We've lived in Woolwich Lane for 27 years, and we live next to a blind spot on the road where the road turns sharply under a former railway bridge, and it has a limited height bridge. That's marked as unsuitable for HGV traffic, but lorry drivers often do try to get through, squeeze their way through sometimes, and those that can't have to reverse quite a distance back in either direction, and it really is dangerous for other road users. The climbing wall proposal is saying that on this narrow rural road, two-way traffic will increase by 22% on a weekday, and we work out that's about 14,000 extra traffic movements on that small rural road a month. That's too much. We'll see even more accidents. It's not safe. Our third objection is that this development...
Under 1 minute left.
Thank you. Is simply not appropriate for a rural location. It's a major 3-storey development in what is currently beautiful open fields. It's very visible from the Worth Way and other footpaths. This building and its associated traffic would overwhelm rather than add to the rural nature of our community. So my neighbours, family and I please ask you to refuse this application. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, the third speaker against the proposal is James Thring, who's chair of the Rowfant Society.
Thank you, Chairman. The Rowfant area is about 100 hereditament between M23 and Crawley Down. About half of them are along Wally's Lane. This application, which is posing as a national asset, is likely to draw phenomenal amounts of traffic from the whole of the southern England. It should be in an area well served by main roads and public transport, which Rowfant isn't. People engaged in global sports like this should use the national facility in Warwick. There is no need for more climbing facilities in the southeast, as they already exist in Crawley, Brighton, Polegate, Guildford, and more locally in Felbridge, as we've just heard, and on a small scale at Tullies Farm in Rowfant. These satisfy what little demand there is locally, and it also is indicated by the fact that the Felbridge facility is threatened with bankruptcy if this one goes ahead. So it would be also a major departure from the development plan as described by the planning department. So it should be refused on this ground alone. Also, we are in a buffer zone, which the strategy for the southeast established by the London and South East Councils and the Department of the Environment to prevent coalition of East Grinstead and the Crawley growth area. Traffic on Wally's Lane, as we've just heard, is overloaded, particularly by HGVs serving industries and expanding business centre. It is narrow, no footpaths, no passing bays, a decontrolled speed limit. It reduces to one lane under Worthway Bridge with blind right-angle bends on each side. The junction with Turners Hill Road at the east end is rated the most dangerous in the county. At the west end of Wallich Lane...
1 minute left.
...is an accident-prone junction with a fast section of Turners Hill Road, again with blind bends in each direction. Public transport's been addressed. The general objection is that this is farmland, which should be reserved for farming and as an amenity for all. Homegrown food will become more vital as population, urban uses and other functions grow, and the economy may recess as a result of financial crises, excessive debt, printing money, imprudent spending, latent wage demands, inflated spending on defence, war and embargoes on Russian imports. And this scheme doubles the size of the original business centre and it's an ugly commercial threat to the rural environment. So we endorse Turners Hill Council's caution that if the project fails, The land will remain blighted and used as an excuse for more unsustainable activities, so there should be some kind of covenant or
Could you
order.
wrap up, please?
That concludes my objections. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Right. Before we move on, did you want to make any comments at this stage, Joe, or would you rather wait till all the speakers have presented? Okay.
So there's been a few comments in relation to sort of a highway safety matter of the use of Wallage Lane. I'd just like to draw members' attention to the fact that we have consulted West Sussex Highways on this, and they've not raised an objection from a highway safety point of view. That's all. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Right. If we now move on to the speakers in favour, Jonathan Best, who's the agent for the applicant, please.
Good afternoon. Taking the 4 reasons for refusal in reverse order. 4, we are happy to sign the legal agreement to secure the massive biodiversity net gain. 3, we are committed to a Section 106 to secure the benefits of the travel plan. 2, planning policy requires significant development to be focused at locations which are, or can be made to be, sustainable. We will provide an hourly electric minibus service connecting to 3 bridges and East Grinstead stations, as well as a dial-a-ride car to surrounding villages like Crawley Down, Turners Hill and Copthorne. How does this compare to other developments? Last year, the Council approved a policy-compliant climbing centre in the countryside near Pease Pottage. Rowfant will be accessible to 40% more people by minibus than Pease Pottage. The travel plan targets more non-driver journeys to Rowfant than the Pease Pottage equivalent. Therefore, Rowfant will be made to be significantly more accessible to people and less reliant on the car than the policy-compliant Pease Pottage equivalent. Moreover, these transport benefits can be secured by the very legal agreement required by RR2 to ensure that Rowfant will offer climbers a genuine choice of transport. Accordingly, the centre will very clearly increase participation in leisure activity in a form that is accessible and sustainable in accordance with the strategic aims of the Leisure and Cultural Strategy, meaning it fully accords with DP24 and, in the words of the policy, should be supported. It also accords with the Sports Development Strategy. 1. Officers advised us that the building design is in keeping with the original character of the locality. Indeed, it is the local landscape character that limits the effect of the development. The local plan acknowledges that the business park has operated with little impact on the surrounding area, as it is well screened from the outside by extensive tree cover, and the same applies to the application site. When considering the nearby marquee development at Rowfant House, such enclosed visual characteristics were considered to protect and maintain the quality of the rural landscape in accordance with policy. Moreover, the main public views of the application site from Worth Way are dominated by the new Rowfant sawmill on a tall gabion wall, the height and scale of which were recently considered acceptable. Therefore, the proposal accords with DP24, and as it will assist in maintaining the quality of the rural landscape character, it accords with DP12. The proposal is new economic development that is in keeping with the original character of the locality and will support the rural economy in accordance with DP14. The proposal isn't for an industrial use and therefore doesn't conflict with SA34. The proposal isn't within an area of substantial landscape value, Turners Hill or public vantage points from the built-up area, and therefore also complies with TPH 8. We therefore hope that you will overturn the officer's recommendation and support the application.
Yeah. Less concentration on the clock, sorry. Thank you very much. Right. Next speaker is Alaric Woods, the applicants.
Thank you, Chairman. I learned rope climbing as a scout and have benefited from this fantastic sport throughout my adult life. And as a scout leader, I now instruct scouts to climb so they can benefit from it too. The UK's Chief Medical Officer specifically recognises the value of climbing to a healthy lifestyle. Providing a first-class roped climbing centre is therefore an excellent way to contribute towards the district plan priority of encouraging a healthy and enjoyable lifestyle. Supported by the BMC, Sport England's national governing body for climbing, they recognise that most rope climbers participate infrequently due to a lack of facilities, and the young who learn to climb at instructed sessions drift away from the sport when they outgrow their local facilities. Sport England's surveys show that the national participation in adventure sport is increasing significantly. The new Clip and Climb Kids Climbing Centre at Pease Pottage found local demand exceeds its expectations, but for those kids to continue with rope climbing, the first-class local rope climbing facilities are required. Indeed, 19-year-old Surrey Olympic climber Toby Roberts supports this application. He began his sporting journey, like all Olympic athletes, at grassroots level. Everyone will be able to progress within the sport to the best of their ability and benefit physically and mentally from a huge range of climbing that will be offered to challenge all levels of climber. Sport England supports the application and emphasise to officers how truly inclusive rope climbing is to the local public community. We will provide an hourly electric minibus to connect to Three Bridges and East Grinstead stations and a dial-a ride to the local villages. The application is supported by East Grinstead Climbing Club, Sussex Paraclimbers, various Scout leaders, Plumpton College and the climbing training charity NICAS, who all recognise the need for the development. It's supported by many climbers from locals to Olympic athletes, as well as the 2 parish councils of Turners Hill and Worth. Indeed, the proposal will also provide 29 full-time equivalent jobs, many aimed at local people, providing flexible working hours, helping to address people leaving the parish to work elsewhere. We have devised a scheme that will surpass all climbing wall standards in a location that is served by an existing access road and where the existing mature trees and topography will largely hide the timber-clad building from public view.
1 minute left.
Extensive proposed landscaping will produce a BNG net gain of 157% for habitats and 408% for hedgerows, substantially above the 10% target, and will further limit views from public rights-of-way. Other wildlife benefits are also proposed, such as bat roosts, boxes for swifts, house martins and other birds. The travel plan will ensure that within 5 years, at least 50% of climbers don't drive themselves to the centre, achieved by electric minibus and dial-a-ride services, provision of secure bike parking for cyclists using the Sustrans Worth Way and car sharing, making sure they exit left when they leave onto Woolwich Lane. Therefore, the proposal will fulfil important social, economic and environmental objectives, helping to develop a strong and competitive local economy. Meeting the Olympic standards for rope climbing, speed climbing and bouldering, this will be a national grade facility to benefit the local community. Indeed, what could be more inspiring to young climbers than to climb alongside current and future Olympic athletes? In our view, this is a highly sustainable proposal, which we hope you will recognise and approve.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, the final speaker in favour is Councillor Graham Casella. And as he's speaking as a member of the public, he still will be restricted to the 3 minutes.
Right, good afternoon everyone. My name is Graham Casella. I've been resident in the area since 1988 and I'm both a district and parish councillor for Worth Parish, which adjoins the site of the proposed development. When we were given a presentation on the development over a year ago, Worth Parish Council Planning Committee unanimously thought that it was a fantastic idea and were fully supportive of it. Nothing has changed in the intervening period. In fact, the improvements that the applicants have made us even more supportive. As a local resident who uses the area regularly, including the Rowfant site, I feel something like this can only bring a benefit to the location. If the development was going to be in the middle of a field, middle of rolling green fields in an area of natural beauty, I'd be against it. However, the proposed site is anything but that, and in fact is more brownfield than greenfield. For those who have not visited the location, it's an industrial area. Amongst the businesses already operating there is a timber merchants, a scrap metal dealer, a breaker's yard, a flow gas distribution centre, a car repair centre, a number of industrial units mainly being used for manufacturing, and a number of shipping containers used for storage.
There's also a very good cafe that serves excellent breakfasts. As you can imagine, that number of units causes a regular flow of traffic in the area, including HGVs. So any small increase in traffic caused by the new centre would be negligible, as is borne out by the traffic survey and the highways report. This development would not be out of place there and would certainly not be harming the countryside. The northern part of the district is starved of decent sporting facilities of all types, and to have the chance of getting a world-class climbing centre in the area is great news. It will generate employment, bring money into the area, and inspire children to take up climbing seriously. Now climbing is an Olympic sport, you never know where things might lead. It's an application that has many positives and is supported by the agencies involved. I would ask the committee to allow this development to proceed. It is supported by the local parishes and the majority of local residents. It's very rare to have a chance to have a world-class facility in the district. Many thanks.
Thank you very much. Before we move on to the ward councillors, did you want to make some comments, John?
Thank you, Chairman. Just to pick up on a couple of points that have been made. There was mention of, obviously, of the Peas Pottage approval. Just so members are aware, it's slightly different in the circumstances that was actually a change of use of an existing industrial building where they did a marketing exercise. So it's not considered that's directly comparable and also would have had a different policy consideration. In relation to the SA 34 that was mentioned, the actual wording of that policy so that's set out in paragraph 12.11. So the assessment, it says outside the built-up area, expansion of existing employment sites for E.g. B2 and B8 uses will only be supported. So we're looking at this use class. It doesn't fall into one of those uses, so it wouldn't fall into the expansion of Rofant. And finally, just to pick up on the parish council supportive comments made, one of the requests by the parish council was that if there was a condition imposed on this proposal, that if the development was to fail, it was returned to its original condition. In terms of the test of conditions, it wouldn't be reasonable to require the applicant to remove it and return it to its original state if this was to fail, because obviously the cost that they've outlaid to put this in place. So we wouldn't be able to put that condition on that the parish council has asked for. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Right, we now move on to the ward councillors. Councillor Jenny Edwards first. And members are aware, but for the benefit members of the public, ward councillors are not restricted in time, but we would obviously ask them to be reasonably succinct in their presentations.
Thank you, Chairman and members, and I will be actually very brief because I was pretty sure that many of the points that I would have made would all have been made by the time I've spoken. So I'm against the proposal because, as with many applications that we've received, it's a case of an interesting idea but in the wrong place. After walking a section of the Worth Way parallel to Woolwich Lane recently and having viewed the proposed site, it feels, among other things, far too large a development to be desirable. Of course, I've studied the proposal and have some very specific objections. I won't list all of them here, but 3 issues in particular hit home with me. Firstly, apparently 80% of the users of the facility would be beginners and intermediates, and these are already well provided for in the area, in Crawley, East Grinstead, and at the recently reopened Blacklands Farm near Sharpthorne. Secondly, traffic generation is always a concern, particularly on our country lanes. The proposal to offer an electric minibus service from Crawley and East Grinstead feels somewhat like box ticking. I have a vision of climbers with their helmets, ropes, and other equipment walking to their local station, getting on a train, and arriving at, well, I now understand it's Three Bridges, I thought Crawley, or East Grinstead, and it feels unrealistic. With something that looks this ambition, this is my final objection, the question is always going to arise, is this a Trojan horse? The expensive erection of a very striking and niche building, if, as appears possible, it proves commercially unviable, what then? Is it repurposed in some way? I know this was just addressed. How, or would it need to be returned to a greenfield site? In which case, what a waste of resources. By an absolute fluke of circumstances, the day I walked along Woolwich Lane, I got a Facebook post from my son who was actually climbing in Chamonix for the first time in his life, and he says it's fantastic. So, but even as a mother of a climber now, I would still recommend that this application was refused because, as stated in the Council's own document, the starting point for assessing such an application is policy DP12, which requires that proposals maintain or enhance the quality of the rural character of the district. This obviously does neither, and therefore I would ask for refusal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, Councillor Gary Marsh. Having sat on committees where he's asked the councillors to be succinct, I won't take the perverse pleasure of asking him to.
You must have heard me say that many times, Chairman.
Indeed.
In my time as Chairman as well. Yes, thank you, Chairman, and fellow councillors. I will be as succinct as possible. I am speaking here on behalf as the Ward Councillor, but I'm also speaking on behalf of Turners Hill Parish Council. And I just want, and thank you, Joe, for reiterating that bit about what they said. But I do want to correct one thing. There is no climbing facilities in Tully's Farm, so, as we heard. So, right, Chairman, this is a balanced decision. It's throughout the report, it says balance on many occasions, and that means it leaves down to the committee that they can make their own decision without fear of favour. Right, I actually called this in with Councillor Gibson. It doesn't appear in the report. I called it in under the, for the health and mental well-being of the district. So I called this in. Now, I'll just quickly go back to your very first application, very quickly. You heard there's 9,500 vehicle movements going in and out of the farm down in the southern part of our district. There's going to be hardly any HGVs down this thing. It's going to be private cars. So private cars really shouldn't have an issue going down there. And as you heard, none of the statutory consultees we use in any of our plan making have objected to this. Now, one of the applicant was asked about why can't you find a brownfield site? Well, any of us have been following the district plan, all brownfield sites have been earmarked for housing. So it stands to reason that doesn't leave anything else other than a greenfield location. And this greenfield location happens to be right next to Rowfant Business Centre. Just the other side of the road, about half a mile to 3/4 of a mile, is one of our big sites of Crabbett Park, which is going to have up to 2,000 plus units on that site. And that's going to drain an awful lot of traffic coming in and out of there. And it means that people who want to live on that site can use the Worthway and just tootle on down to this site if they want to do this. Much has been said, as Joseph said, about the Section 106 of BNG. Now, the reason this hasn't been progressed because it was up for refusal, and it would be unreasonable to ask the applicant to undertake the Section 106 of BNG. But in your paragraph 12.58, it does say that there's a 157% increase in hedgerows of 408%. So the 10% that we were asked for is going to be easily met. Now, the big bit which I really do have an issue with is Sports England. Now, Sports England have said there is a need for this site in the southeast of England, but according to the objectors, anywhere but mid-Sussex, apparently. Now, this would be a tragedy if it went across the road into Horsham or Tandridge. And they've got greenfield sites, so why can't we have it in mid-Sussex? As Councillor Casella said, a world-class climbing scheme in the northern part of the district for the benefit of the whole of the district is something that we should be rightly proud of. And I'm going to mention East Grinstead Sports Club, because when that first came along, and I found out today, there are no direct buses that go to East Grinstead Sports Club. It goes down Sent Hill Road, so everything's arrives by car there. But this is going to have the bus route going through, which is Stagecoach, and Metro Bus, and you heard from the applicant there's going to be electric minibuses, dial-a-ride and stuff like that. Many eco-credentials on this site. And finally, the Rofant Business Centre has been recently expanded, because I was consulted as the ward councillor. You've got everything that was put on the site, as Councillor Casella said and the other speakers have said, and the wood store. The wood store has got an enormously new building on that site, and that would dwarf what's going to be here, because this one sits down in a hollow. Was that succinct enough for you, Chairman?
Excellent, thank you very much.
Oh, and I do wish you to, no, I don't normally speak against the officer's recommendations, but in this case I felt, on balance, this should be supported as opposed to refused. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. Joe, would you like to make any comments before we start, sir? Debate?
There's just a couple of things just to highlight. In regards to Councillor Casella's comments about it being a brownfield site, I just want to clarify that this is a greenfield site. And in terms of Councillor Marsh's comments about the bus stop, the closest bus stop as set out within the supporting documents is 1.1 miles. Obviously, they are seeking to provide an electric minibus service to and from East Grinstead Station and Three Bridges. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Well, members, you've heard a lot of conflicting views, and I've always felt it would be useful where the officer says that there is a balanced decision, that we actually had a little scale showing us just how balanced the decision was, but that's for us to decide. So I open the discussion to members. Councillor Prescott.
Thank you, Chairman. I welcome this application, and I also I was very surprised when I went to see the site. I'm not familiar with the Rofant site at all, or the business park, but having stood in the field and looked at it, this building will sit very comfortably in its local environment. Its ridge line is generally below the tree line. It's barely visible. It's just I think it's at the eastern end, I think. And I think that whilst the building is industrial by its very nature, I still think that this is a wonderful facility. We were critical of the first application that came before us this afternoon because it was really a sort of a national quality polo field that was in private hands, but it's still, nonetheless, it's a unique sporting facility. This is also a unique sporting facility. And I climbed throughout my 20s, 30s and 40s all around the world, and I was very fortunate, having sort of grown up in the northwest of England, that I had access to the Lake District and the Peak District. When I moved south, I very quickly realised how poor the climbing facilities are. And going over to Tunbridge Wells, to the sandstone outcrops there, that you were crowded and waiting all day to have access to good quality sort of climbing. And at the time, there were no climbing facilities. There are some local at the likes of K2, but this is a national grade facility. And we should be welcoming with open arms the fact that we can bring young athletes and mature athletes to give them a facility and bring them the area. We should be supporting this wholeheartedly to have a national sporting facility. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Prescott. Councillor Bates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, one could say that climbing is on the way up. Because it is now an Olympic sport, and the next few months we're going to see that on the TV. It's very interesting that this proposal's come forward. I think it's very bold. As a sportsman and as past scout, I'm very supportive. However, listening to all the discussions, etc., about this being located in an industrial location and conversions, that would be something that should have been brought forward here. And also, so many people talking about other places that one can climb. Now, as far as I understand, there is no other place in Britain that provides this level of climbing facility. So we're very confused here with this debate. And so I would like to have seen a bit more information on that. Now, the irony of it is, on that particular day, I ended up in a triangle in Burgess Hill. And I walked in there, and first thing I see is a climbing wall. And we also know that that site, if you look around, so I'm playing devil's advocate here, you could actually put that facility on that the triangle. And so I just suggest that. But, you know, just generally, I am very supportive of this proposal, and we'll let it see where it goes.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chairman. I visited the site on Tuesday and saw this particular location for this development. It's certainly in the countryside on a greenfield site, but it's very, very closely beside a substantial industrial estate. Also, the site is actually fairly low down, and I gather, even though the building has to be quite tall to accommodate the climbing wall and the necessary safety equipment above that, nevertheless, the top of that building will be no higher because of the lowness of the site with some of the taller buildings on the industrial estate. Looking also around to the west and to the south, that site is surrounded by mature woodland where the trees are well above, but quite tall, mature trees, which are certainly about the level of or above the height of this proposed building. And then to the east, on the other side of the development, also there are some trees. So the only place where you can really see it is from the north, where you've got a brow of the hill looking down. But looking down, the first thing you would see, and I saw that driving down the road to this particular site, that the industrial estate, and this will also be with that sort of industrial estate, so it'll be a similar sort of, but maybe a slight extension of what you appear, which is not that a bad appearance. So I think on balance, in terms of its location, in terms of obviously the generation of additional car traffic, but then of course there's quite a lot of traffic will be generated by the industrial estate, and some of those units in the industrial estate, and certainly the wood yard further up, does generate quite a lot of traffic, including lorry traffic. So I think probably on balance, I think I would agree and accept this application.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Are there any other members that wish to speak? If not, I will make a few comments from the Councillor Sweatman.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it's a difficult one. This application is finely balanced. Whilst I appreciate the comments from Sport England that there is a need for a climbing centre in the south, and I'm all for sporting facilities and opportunities that we can get. However, we have to look, and this is where I'm coming from personally, we all have to look at our policies and our district plan. We've worked many years to get to this stage, to where we are, to protect the countryside. This application constitutes a major development in the countryside and doesn't adhere to the same class use as the Rosebank industrial estate. There is a point where, you know, going back, I'm sure Councillor Marsh and Councillor Phillips would agree that we've even inspectors refused applications on inadequate links to certain facilities, you know, transport and difficulty to get to. I certainly believe this would be better served in a more townscape sort of environment where there's more adequate public transport, you know, that people can actually get to this facility. It also, if you look in the paperwork, it doesn't adhere to certain key policies in our neighbourhood plan. And to me, that is an issue. And also TNP 8 of the Turners Hill Parish plan. I'm going to start there, but I'm really concerned that although I support applications like this, to me, I have an issue with its location. And when we're looking at supporting or looking at key policies in our district plan, then I feel we need to support those policies, whether we like the application or not. And it's not a question whether I like it or don't like it. You know, my view as a councillor, I've been on planning for 12 years. I feel like I have to be consistent. And I'm sorry if this goes against the applicants, but, you know, I think we have to be consistent, and that's my view, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Reeves.
Thank you, Chair. It strikes me that the reasons that we're being asked to refuse this are very much reasons which could have applied to the first application we heard today, changing the character of the site, maybe better sites out there, not sustainable. If it fails, will be a scar on the countryside against DP12. The only difference being that this one might actually provide some jobs. However, I feel that it is in a very difficult situation in terms of transport. I appreciate the efforts of the applicants very much because I think they're really trying to do the right thing, but I do feel that this is not a sustainable location. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to make any comments, Joe? Or are you happy so far? Okay. Yeah, if I can just make a few comments from the chair. Frankly, I think this is one of the most difficult decisions I think that's come before us. Yes, I accept it is in the countryside. I mean, it's there in the district plan, and there are some concerns about the sustainability and the transport there. But it's adjacent to a business park. About 200 yards away, there is a sawmill. And about 200 yards to the to the northwest, there is a Colas, quite a large business site. So I do find it's a very, very difficult decision, and I can understand members that they're probably going to have a lot of difficulty making a decision on this site. In terms of the Worth Way, I must admit I don't think there is going to be much visibility because of the mound of the front field there. So I think there will be a site over the roof. And although residents are concerned about the highways issues there, and if anybody's visited there, and I mean I've lived in the area in Copthorne for 44 years. It isn't the best of roads, but County Highways have said they have no objection. And while it's always a bugbear of ours, the fact of the matter is, unless there is a severe impact, County Highways are bound to not raise any objections. And also, in terms of sites, I do have some sympathy with the applicant because I know it's not an issue, but I have been working with Copthorne Football Club to find a site in that area. And you'll find that it's almost impossible because everyone will not release sites because they think at some stage they're going to get there'll be a change of government, there'll be a change in the law, and everyone's going to get permission to build on their sites. So nobody is prepared to sell or release sites to you for sport and recreation. So yeah, it's a difficult decision. Do any other members wish to speak? Councillor Whitaker.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, indeed. I'm very, very torn on this as a renowned sportaholic. I support all sports and the promotion of all sports, as I mentioned in a previous application. I'm particularly torn here because I know Mr. Reid and Volume 1 Climbing, which is in my ward, in Birches Industrial Estate in East Grinstead, very successful business. And I know some of the circumstances that members won't be aware of, about this application. So, with my, and I appreciate all the speakers, and it's very good to hear all points of view. So and it's not often I'm on the fence, but I am really on the fence here, which way. My overriding feeling as a district councillor responsibility is that I feel if we do follow the officer recommendation and it goes to appeal, this district council will lose the appeal because the reasons for refusal are very thin, and Mr. Best has already prepared his gunpowder for that by saying they're prepared to sign up to 106. He's covered all the biodiversity and the travel plan and the needs documents, which are actually all on the portal. So that leaves just the countryside DP12 and DP14 to defend a potential appeal. So as a district council, my responsibility is to this district council, but also I have a responsibility to existing businesses in East Grinstead. So I am very torn.
Thank you. Councillor Berggreen.
Very briefly, I support the sport, but I still feel, despite being close to an industrial units, that it is the wrong proposal. It's the wrong place for this type of. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to make any other comments, Joe? If not, I'll ask Steve King wanted to make some comments. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So, appreciate this. Obviously, an application that's generated obviously strong views for and against. But in terms of just trying to sum it up very briefly and distill it right down, I think from an officer's perspective, in terms of a facility and what it offers in relation to the sport of climbing, clearly that's weighs heavily in favour of the application. That's a positive thing for the district. But I think, in a nutshell, it's a good facility, but in officer's view, the wrong location. And that is the reason why the scheme, in your officer's view, is in clear conflict with the development plan, and even with the measures that the applicant is putting forward in terms of the travel plan and the minibus service. We still think that this is the wrong location, and it will still be reliant on the private car for access. Clearly, the overall balance to be struck between all of those things is ultimately a matter for the decision maker, i.e. yourselves as the planning committee. What I would say is that if members are minded to approve the application, we need to be clear that that would be subject to the applicants entering into legal agreement to secure that minibus service, because that's been put forward by the applicants clearly as a way of attempting to mitigate as best they think they can do the location of the site, which is not well served by public transport. It is right out in the countryside. So if members are minded to approve the application, I think we would want it to be clear that that would be subject to that minibus service being secured. And obviously, if it transpired that we couldn't secure that in a satisfactory form and a satisfactory legal agreement, it may have to come back to committee again, and we'll report that to you. But it was just to try and distill it all down and clarify that point, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Right, okay, if no... sorry, yeah,
Point of interest.
Councillor Bates, yeah.
Point of interest. If we didn't decide for or against this application, what would be the outcome of deliberation?
If there was a a tied vote.
Or there's more that didn't want to vote?
Didn't want to vote.
There's an alternative.
Sorry, I don't understand where you're coming from. I mean, members have got three choices. They can
well,
vote
a
for,
third
against, or
choice.
abstain.
A third, abstain, if that was a...
It doesn't matter. I mean, if more abstain than vote for or against, it's still decided on the basis of the number of votes for or against.
Okay.
Yeah. Right, in that case, is someone prepared to move the recommendation for refusal, or does someone want to recommend an alternative?
I recommend refuse with the officer's recommendations.
Right, okay. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Birdgreen, right. If we could move to the votes then, please. Sorry, you vote yes if you want it to be refused. Right, we have 3 in favour, 4 against and 3 abstentions. So, as that motion fails, is someone prepared to move a motion that the application should be approved, subject to a satisfactory section 106 legal agreement being signed within 3 months of today's meeting? Right, we have a proposer and seconder. Can we move to the vote, please? Right, so we have 4 votes in favour, 3 against and 2 abstentions. So the recommendation is for approval, subject to a satisfactory 106 agreement, legal agreement being signed within 3 months of today's date. Sorry. Seven, 9. Sorry, yeah, sorry, I apologise. Yes, there is one person that hasn't voted on that one. Right, so it's 4 in favour, 3 against and 3 abstentions. So the decision for approval stands, subject to the 106 agreement. Right, so move on to item 9, questions pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 10.2, due notice of which has been given. I have none. So I close the meeting at 4:21. Thank you very much, members, and members of the public for attending.